the Open Hydrogen Initiative, which is part of the Gas Technology Institute, GTI, RMI, the Hydrogen Fuel Cell Partnership, which is working on a hydrogen refueling network for medium and heavy duty trucking, probably starting with the California to Houston link. Mission Possible Partnership, which is an extension of a World Economic Forum activities. And I think that Killian is going to talk a little bit more about some European perspectives that the World Economic Forum is drawing from as well. So that's all that I have. Thank you all for your time, and I'm also happy to answer any questions, and I'll turn it over to Killian at this point.
Thanks, John. And Killian, I'll let you round us out.
Yes, great. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I will share my screen and present some slides. Yeah. So everything's good? Yeah.
Perfect.
Awesome. So thank you, first of all, to the other participants. Great context setting, and really interesting to hear about the projects going on in the United States. So yes, my name is Killian Daly. I'm the general manager of a nonprofit called EnergyTag. But before, maybe as a bit of context, before I joined EnergyTag, I worked in the hydrogen sector for 5 years in a company called Air Liquide, which is one of the major hydrogen producers in the world and runs that Gulf Coast pipeline mentioned previously. So yeah, I'm quite familiar with the hydrogen sector. So coming at it from a new angle as well with EnergyTag, where we're focused on the hourly traceability of electricity. Just a quick word on EnergyTag to get you up to speed with what we're about, and then I will focus back on hydrogen. So we're a global nonprofit based in the UK, but very much has a global scope to enable hourly RECs basically around the world to increase the transparency and granularity of clean electricity claims. And yeah, very big focus also in the United States. Doug is one of our advisory committee members amongst some of the big utilities and buyers also there. So very much an EU-US initiative with a global expansion planned. And that, this new form of tracking enables more informed choice, more time-based choice of electricity, so you can make sure that you're securing clean energy every hour. And that is obviously really important for hydrogen, and I'll come to that later on. Another key thing is that, time-based electricity choice incentivizes storage and flexibility, which are not really incentivized today with more annual approaches. There's various research on this, happy to share some of that also afterwards to prove the benefits of this. So we have a standard for hourly tracking that we published at the end of March, and it's supported by these organizations. So a lot of big buyers, big utilities, and other major stakeholders from around the world who are supporters of our initiative, including CEBI. So to hydrogen, it's a topic we work on a lot at EnergyTag as well, particularly in the European context, and now more and more in the United States, as the US is looking to set its own accounting criteria for hydrogen. We believe that should be 24/7. First of all, I'll kind of take a step back and see where we are today with the hydrogen market, with some of the hydrogen standards that exist around the world today. This has been mentioned already. Just to recap, there's green hydrogen, which is from electricity, if that's green electricity, otherwise it's not green. And blue hydrogen, of course, is from CCS of natural gas. So they're the two kind of major options for the low carbon hydrogen future, and they've been covered already. I will focus more on the green hydrogen part because that's where electricity is involved, and that's kind of where a lot of the debate is really happening around these standards at the moment. With blue hydrogen, you capture the CO2, you sequester it properly. It's kind of less open to interpretation than some of the accounting methods we would use for electricity. So that's what I will focus on today. So obviously today, global demand for hydrogen is 90 million tons. It's mainly from refining and ammonia. They're the two big demand centers at the moment, and that's very much a fossil-based system at the moment, as we see here. It's gas, coal, and various chemical byproducts that are the feedstocks for hydrogen. Green and blue are what we need to decarbonize this hydrogen sector, which would obviously be crucial in a decarbonized energy future, as has been covered already. But it's still early days for these projects, and now is the time to set good standards. Once the markets ramp up, it's just really disruptive to change standards for industry. So good standards need to be in place early, and now is the chance to do that. that's some of the project growth. This is some stats from the IEA's hydrogen report. Obviously, we're still in the very early days of green hydrogen projects, but a massive expansion, coming in the coming years. And obviously, the United States will become majorly into the fold due to the tax credits and the Inflation Reduction Act. And really importantly, green hydrogen, it could be a massive driver for clean electricity production, clean storage. And that's something really important to keep in mind. It's a huge opportunity for clean energy also, because hydrogen is just a store of electricity. For example, if we were to produce all of the world's hydrogen today with green hydrogen, we need 4,500 terawatt hours of electricity, and that's more than the United States. So the orders of magnitude are enormous. We will need a lot of clean electricity to decarbonize the hydrogen sector. EACs, so energy attribute certificates, they enable these voluntary markets. It's absolutely crucial. They underpin everything. And that's basically what we need, right? Like for green hydrogen, we need electricity, energy attribute certificates that flow into hydrogen production and then produce hydrogen energy attribute certificates to produce that voluntary market that Doug mentioned at the beginning. This is, obviously the basis of this market, and it's really, really important to get right and to provide those proper market signals for both electricity and for hydrogen. And the quality criteria, so some of the things around temporality and deliverability, can hugely impact the quality of the hydrogen production when we talk about the electricity quality criteria, and I'll come to that in a minute. Just to give an example of the hydrogen standard that has been developed in Europe, it's called Certified. So there is an industry standard for hydrogen that was developed at the request of the European Union, basically the European Commission. It's an EU-wide system to issue hydrogen guarantees of origin, hydrogen RECs, hydrogen energy attribute certificates, put together by, basically the who's who of the European energy and hydrogen sector. And I think a really good model that the United States could look to follow. And they have a green hydrogen certification and a low carbon hydrogen certification. So also one for blue hydrogen and CCS. And basically they have to meet 60% emissions reductions in order to get that GO. So that's, that's a really, really good example. It's a central EU registry also, but the volumes do remain low today. Happy to also go into that a bit more around volumes. The certifying mechanism is this, basically. It creates that hydrogen market with GOs. And of course, electricity guarantees of origin are required, and it's not linked physically to electricity or hydrogen flows. Currently, it uses an annual accounting method, and the European Union is actually setting new laws at the moment for what it means to be renewable hydrogen that will be stricter than this. And obviously, Certify will update itself as the regulation changes as well. So just a word on what to think about as we think about tomorrow's hydrogen standards, as this sector starts to receive a massive amount of subsidy and a huge amount of growth. Probably stricter standards than we have today will be needed. That's just a quote I took from the Treasury Department and IRS consultation that closed recently, where they're asking about the quality criteria around time, location, vintage of instruments, whether they be RECs or power purchase agreements alongside RECs, if they're to be used for clean hydrogen production. It's really, really important to think of these. So some of the looser standards, when we look at time, location, and vintage here on the left, would be more annual, continental, or any asset, whereas some of the more strong standards now we're seeing in terms of how to ensure clean electricity supply, look at more hourly, local, and newer assets to ensure that really that hydrogen unit is being supplied every hour, everywhere with clean electricity. And that provides important new incentives. For example, storage. If you have hourly rules, storage has a role to play. If you have annual rules, it may not have as much of a role. And this is very much the strong criteria, by the way. That's what's currently proposed in the draft legislation by the European Union, and also for the US government, who have a 24/7 electricity target. It's important because of this. If you allow fossil electricity to produce hydrogen, things can get very quickly out of hand in terms of emissions. So if you take natural gas, produce electricity, and then produce hydrogen, you'll have 20 kilos basically of CO2 per kilo of hydrogen. So that's twice as intensive as grey hydrogen is today. So it's better just to use the gas directly in the SMR for efficiency reasons. So we really have to make sure every hour that we're getting truly clean electricity supply. And that really will enable a true green hydrogen sector. There's been some modeling done on this by Princeton University for the California 2030 case, showing at a system level exactly what I've shown on the previous slide. Having those proper stricter rules will, with time-based sourcing, will basically help ensure that we don't have adverse effects, and that green hydrogen doesn't end up actually producing more emissions than grey hydrogen, because we're calling on too much fossil electricity generation to produce that hydrogen. And again, that can come at a relatively low cost premium as well, as proven by this paper. So that's something quite important to keep in mind. And another point as well, obviously, if you want to look at blue versus green, etc., we need to make sure that that green hydrogen is actually delivering real world emission production, so that it's a level playing field between blue and green, blue and green hydrogen. So just a bit of a word about some of the accounting standards and policies around the world today for hydrogen. So the EU has targets for basically 10 million tons of hydrogen internally and 10 million tons imported by 2030. A lot of electricity there again, twice France. So it could be a massive boon for the clean electricity sector. And they're very, very ambitious targets. And at the moment, the European Union is proposing 24/7 local PPA rules for green hydrogen qualification. That's not final yet. That's coming in the coming weeks, but that's the current position of the EU. Obviously, the United States has the massive tax credit as part of the Inflation Reduction Act, up to $3 with very, very low intensity hydrogen, and the Department of Energy and the IRS have done consultations on this recently. The UK has a hydrogen standard already published, which does include 24/7 accounting. So there's a general, consideration and movement towards, time-based accounting to ensure green hydrogen production. And, I'm sure many more governments around the world are going to be looking at their own standards in the coming years. So obviously the big one to follow next year and maybe the year after will be in the United States, to see how the Treasury and Department of Energy set the standards there to qualify for those tax credits, which will obviously define how this industry is built. So yeah, we have been doing a bit of advocacy in favor of 24/7 approaches for hydrogen. So that's a letter we recently sent to the European Commission, along with some industry players as well, asking for strong rules for hydrogen. And we'll be looking to do the same basically in the United States as well over the coming year alongside partners. And that is it from me. So please do reach out. There's my email. Our website has a sign-up form if you want to join our working groups to learn more about hydrogen, to learn more about clean electricity traceability. And obviously, contacting the folks at CEBI as well is a really good way to get in touch with us, as we work really closely. So thank you very much for your time, and now open up to any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Killian, for that insightful presentation. I will ask all our speakers to come back on camera for audience Q&A, but before we do that, I'm going to launch